Rats on the west side, bed bugs uptown. Okay, here's the deal. Reverb's off. Sorry about the reverb again the other day. I'm just kind of a skull. I made the video. And then I realized it was on, but I said everything in the video I wanted to say so welly that I didn't want to go and do it again. So there's no reverb here. Very sorry. I know some people get their balls in a bunch over the reverb. It's all right, folks. It won't kill you. All right, so check this out. This is another pathetic, blatant appeal to try to get Stewart Copeland to make his in advance. Like now, Jimmy Page would have to go through the Led Zeppelin stuff and sort of go backwards and get the tracks himself, but you couldn't interview Bonham or anybody else. But Copeland's still alive. He's got the Sacred Grove Studios. He's a living legend. He's a master drummer. God, watch all that live stuff. I go down Stewart Copeland wormholes and live playing, and you got Copeland when he gets going, man. Like even 10 years ago when they did that tour, I really wanted to see those guys at MSG. I think it was like their last gig. I wanted to sit at Madison Square Garden, the old Madison Square Garden, and watch Copeland from behind, as if I was getting a 2-for-1, like I was at the Zeppelin show in '73 too, watching Bonham, but it's Copeland. But Copeland has the Sacred Grove Studios. He has access to all the master tapes and everything. He could sit and do videos like, all right, everybody, off the first record, here's Roxanne. Well, we did it 3 times. We did 3. Here's the first take we did. We had this part in. This is my snare drum here. Here are the drums by themselves. This is the snare drum I used. Oh, by the way, I used in those days, it was this and that. We'd eat it up, man. We'd pay for it. Tom and Peisty would sponsor it. Be cash cow for Copeland. Cash cow for Copeland. That's a song I'm going to make on the drums. It would be a cash cow for Copeland. Be a win-win for everybody. Tom and Peisty could sponsor it. Anyway, so this is a collection of interviews that are put on a site called Infinite Density, which has been on the internet for a long time because I've read this numerous times over the years that I think a lot of us have. So be patient here with me reading this because I get foaming at the mouthy about anything drums. I start talking faster, and I actually have pretty good reading skills. Like when I can read, I could do book readings, like War and Peace. But what happens is, when the subject matter's drums, I start talking fast and I kind of start getting monotony. I wonder if I'm actually on, and I know this sounds, I don't mean for this to sound rough or insulting to anybody, if I'm like on the autism scale, man, I wonder that sometimes. Like, what if you are, but you're the last to know? You know what I mean? What if you're one of those people that, people are kind of like, yeah, but then there's that guy. All right, so check this out. So I might skip around. We're going to start right on the gear, okay? But Copeland, man, he could make 20 videos on his gear. Remember how he showed us the snare of ill repute? Or unknown originary? Well, he could be like, well, here's the ride I used on the first 3 records, a Zildjian probably. Rock Ride probably, or Rock 21. It could be anything. It looks like a Zildjian in all the old footage from the hammering on it and the way it sort of looks. It looks like a 21. Doesn't look like a 22. It could be. Anyway, so we're going to get right to. There's a lot of information here. So just, Infinite Density, 2 words but as one chunk, .net. InfiniteDensity.net. Search Stewart Copeland. You'll see all these kind of best of articles somebody sort of collated and put here. But I'm going to read some of these to you. So, we'll start with the gear here, because these will be long. I actually tried to make these before, and they were like 3 different videos. It was like 60 minutes almost. But again, I was getting so ahead of myself reading, I have to work on my delivery. Okay, so here we go. Gear. So, we've seen different times, like in some Peisty ads, you'd see like Stewart Copeland's cymbal setup in the ad. You'd see in those days, I think you'd see like a 21-inch, maybe medium ride, maybe 13-inch heavy hats, and you saw, maybe the Roods were out then, so maybe there were a couple of Roods, 216 crash rides and 218s maybe, if I remember. But there's different things that he played. I mean, I remember seeing a couple pictures online and in a book I have where he's rehearsing with the Police for the 1983-84 Synchronicity stuff in Copeland's basement. And he's sitting there, and it's cool. You can see, like, a cool wood wall and stuff right by him, and he's all sweaty, and he's sitting there, and he's Andy Summers and these guys probably have all their gear right there, and Copeland has a pair of 2002 Soundage hi-hats there. I don't know what size they were, but he had all kinds of stuff. But let's find out. All right, so here we go. Let's go right down to. God, this is so cool. He talks about the echo he used and the drums he used and how they used to edit a lot. And all right. Oh, this is funny. Here we go. Okay, August 1983, Music UK. So the Music UK is a magazine or a periodical or something. And so this is narrated almost like a book. Okay, so I'll talk like Copeland. I'll talk a little higher and more intense, although he has a lower voice. Anyway, August 1983, I begin by asking Copeland if it was easy to stick to what is a very simple drum pattern on the recent single Every Breath You Take. Okay, remember, August 83, because that was recorded in December 82-ish. Simple drum pattern, recent single, Every Breath You Take. Yes, it was, he confirms. In fact, the drum box played half of it, and I played the other half. Sometimes it's cleverer to do less, and in fact, I'm proud of my playing on that record because I'm known as a busy player, but I do have taste. I thought I was being very clever. A lot of work went into what I did play, but I just didn't play very much at the end of the day. I think he's talking about Every Breath You Take, where I think Sting wanted a drum machine the whole time, and Copeland's like, no, I'm going to put my thing on it. So Copeland, I think, played, you can hear sometimes his ride cymbal at the end, like a little bit of the bell. You can hear that tossed on there from where I'm coming from. Cymbals overdubbed. Okay, so then we go right on to when I asked Stewart about the Tama kit he's playing presently, he surprises me to say the least. 3 tom-toms in the front are shrugs his shoulders here, kind of small, 1 tom-tom to the right. So he's got his 10, 12, 13, as we police sites know, and his 16-inch floor. Now, Copeland seems to be one of those guys. There's a lot of great drummers out there. They really don't know or even care about gear. To them, it's about drumming. They're not like, well, this is a 1960 Super Ludwig, like whatever. If it sounds good, I'm going to use it. Like Neil Peart with his Zildjians back in the day. They'd be like, Neil, that great crash, those 2 crashes you have, are those medium thin? They'd be like, I don't know, Zildjian sent it to me. I'm not sure what they are. So here we are. So he says, it's the tom-toms. And then the author says, can you give me the sizes? I probe, hopefully. Copeland says, no, I can't, admits a slightly befuddled Stewart Copeland. Well, they're small. They're generally small. The only comment is that they're small with very thick 9-ply shells. And I'm not sure if that's the Imperial Star, the Superstar, or the Wonder Star, or whatever. I'll tell you, man, Copeland is a great Tama endorser, because in almost every one of these articles, there's some from 1980, a couple from 81, a couple from 82, 83. In each article, he plugs Tama hardcore, man. Because he wants to. It's really interesting. So he says, Imperial Star, the Superstar, the Wonder Star, whatever. They sound very deep and thick, even when you tune the heads really tight. You actually get more control over the sound of the drum the smaller they are, within certain limitations, of course. But I found I can get a bigger sound with a little drum. Okay, I have one bass drum in which I think is a 22, possibly. That's so endearing. He thinks it's a 22. And the snare drum, a hi-hat, a ride cymbal, a China type, an assortment of crash cymbals. And the only thing that's different, I suppose, as far as cymbals go, is I like to use little tiny ones. Most of these cymbals are Peisty, with 1 or 2 Zildjians in there. Now, we ultimate dyed-at-the-wool Copeland-ites know that that's true, because I remember seeing pictures, and I've said this in other videos, in 1981 or 82, when they're doing the Ghost in the Machine tour, and you can see Copeland, I always want to say Bonham, Copeland with his, his rude crash rides and his big 24-inch ride crash and his 13-inch, which to me in the photographs almost look like 2002s. I'm sorry. And the 2 splashes right in front of him, that he'd have sort of right in the photographer, you're looking at him right here, they clearly said Zildjian on him. And that, of course, is about 2 or 3 years after he's a Peisty endorser. But, a great, any instrument is any instrument. The Peisty folks don't mind, who cares? And the Zildjian folks, you know what I mean? You want to, played Peisty 99.9% of the time. Moving forward. With 1 or 2 Zildjians in there. The tiny little ones are really good. Splish, splash, splash, he says. A great name if the police ever decide to undertake any low-key personal appearances. That's interesting. Imagine having a Ghost in the Machine T-shirt with the 3 digital faces that said "Splish Splash Splash." I bet Stewart could sell those. With a big cymbal, you have to hit a bass drum or a snare drum at the same time to give definition, but the little one will cut through all on its own. And Copeland does that all the time. Here he hits those splashes, like in Driven to Tears. You know that little fill at the end of Driven to Tears? He does one in there. And this is one you'd have to make a whole video to. You know the fill I'm talking about. Anyway, I think when he says, but the little one will cut through all on its own, you hear those so clearly there. And then he says, I've augmented the kit in interesting ways for stage work. The bass drum has a contact mic on it, which goes through a Thomas drum synth. And with it, I can electronically enhance the bottom end of the bass drum, really give it a hard definition. And that's, Copeland and some folks back in those days were really the first triggers. They sort of invented sort of triggers. I mean, Copeland used to use a clap trap where he'd beef up the sound of his snare drum sound with, he says it in here, the hiss of a clap trap, to give it like that. So then he said, what else do we get here? Oh, here we go. What do you say? I'm sorry, I should finish this. I've augmented the kit in interesting ways for stage work. The bass drum has a contact mic, blah, blah, blah. Electronically enhance the bottom end of the bass drum, really give it a hard definition. It seems to me that I have the deepest bass drum sound of any group. You see, that's why I use Tama, because they make all this neat shit. I'm telling you, in every one of these individual dated articles, he brings up Tama. Very flatteringly. God love him. All right, so May 9th, that was August 83. This is August 83, May 84. So almost a full year later, winding down the Synchronicity tour. Author says, how did you develop your individual sound? Copeland. The sound developed itself through the drums. With the Tama drums I'm using, here he goes again, God love him, I'm able to tune them very tight and get response so I can do clever stuff, but they still have a thick sound. It's a matter of getting the sound to cut through. The snare drum is really quite tight and bright and thin until you get it in a big hall and put it through a big PA. The sound of the drums pretty much like tin cans until you put them through a PA. That's a very interesting point that most very seasoned musicians have, like going to the studio. Your drums can sound like shite sitting behind them in the room with your headphones, but they might sound after, even just as is, with a little reverb or effects or compression or whatever, might sound perfect for what's going on in the song department out there, right? That's the audience. Like sometimes when we're playing our drum set, they sound great from where we're sitting, but sometimes off to the left they might sound thinny, right? So you put the microphone here. But the key to Copeland seems to be, as a lot of us know, he would crank the toms way up, and when he'd hit them, you got like a do, right? And he says part of the getting the sound was through the PA, gizmos, and even the room itself. So, now Stewart Copeland's equipment here in this May 1984 article. Stewart Copeland's basic gear is Tama and Paiste. Quote, I use Tama because they make the best stuff and also the widest variety of stuff. I like to fiddle around with different shapes and sizes, says Stewart, and anything that you can smash and hang on a stand. I'll give it a try, and Paiste makes the widest variety of targets. His Midnight Blue Tom Imperial Star setup includes a 5-inch snare, deep, 22-inch bass drum. He says he uses a quick insert. He says he uses the Synare, Synare. I think that was maybe like a Simmonsy type drum that was almost like a it was like a MIDI kind. I think what you could program different sounds to come out of it, or I don't know. I think it was like a Simmons just designed just for snare you could use and ass with the. I forget. I remember seeing the ads in the old Modern Drummers. It's Synare. Anyway, so he says, my setup includes a 5-inch snare, 22-inch bass drum. He says he uses the Synare and he triggers the bass drum to beef it up. He says he uses 10, 12, and 13-inch rack toms and a 16-inch floor tom, plus 4-piece set of octobans. A lot of people say octobands. I think he does too. Hardware is Tama, mainly Titan, with the King Beat pedal. God, you remember the Titan stuff? The early Titan stuff that had like almost those square alumini, like almost like camera light bass tripods, kind of. All right, and he says here, this is still May 84. He says, cymbally speaking, May 84, cymbally speaking, on stage, it's Formula 602 13-inch medium hi-hats. And in parentheses, it says sans sound edge, which is French. Sans, or sans, as they say, or sans, as I seem to remember in my French class, means without. So those 13-inch medium hi-hats are 602s that are not sound edge, right? But the reason why a lot of diehard Copeland-y people like us might be like, well, why would they say they even have sound edge? Well, I said before that there was a picture of Copeland playing, rehearsing with the guys in 83, 84, where you do see a pair. I'll find the picture here. I have it somewhere. Where he's got a pair of, and they look to be 14s, Sound Edge 2002 hats. Red label. So anyway, so that's it. Formula 602 13-inch medium hats, at least in this instance, okay? I mean, I'm sure he played, in that Peisty ad, it did say he had 13-inch heavy hats, too. And I know that, I mean, it's known that he also played 13-inch heavy, Formula 602. I think he also played 13-inch 2002 heavies as well. But anyway, so he says the 13-inch hats, and he says a 16-inch thin crash, two 8-inch 2002 bell cymbals, two 8 and an 11-inch 2002 splashes. Peisty always loved the 11-inch. They did. You know what I mean? I think Tama and Sonar might even made 11-inch tom-toms in those days. And Rude 14, 16, and 22-inch crash rides. So he's saying here he has 14, 16, and 22-inch crash rides. I do remember another Peisty ad where we had a pair of 16-inch crash ride Rudes. Remember, those original Rudes just said the word Rude on them. It was pretty cool. It didn't say Peisty or anything else. It just said Rude, like in sort of like a stencil-y thing. 16, 18, so 216, 218, I think 120 or 220s. His 24-inch ride crash, the China. But anyway, here he's saying Rude 14, 16, and 22-inch crash rides. Although, technically, we Peisty people know that a 22-inch cymbal in Rudeville wouldn't say crash ride. It would say ride crash. No, but see the difference between gear, people? In the studio... so he said, forgive me here, will you? I'm sorry. On stage, it's what I said. The Formula 602 13-inch medium hats, 16-inch thin crash, two 8-inch 2002 bell cymbals, two 8 and an 11-inch 2002 splashes, and Rude 14, 16, and 22-inch crash rides. In the studio, he says here, Formula 2002 16 and 18-inch mediums. There you go. Remember, in Peistyville, it's a medium. They didn't call it in 2002ville or in 602ville or in a lot of Peistyville. It was a medium cymbal. End of story. In 602ville, they made a medium ride model. They made a medium cymbal and a medium ride model. In Peistyville, they just made a medium. There is no medium ride. Okay? Just so we know. And a 22-inch Formula 602 heavy ride replaced the Rudes. Yeah, 22-inch heavy. I also want to say in one of those Peisty ads that the heavy 602 in the picture might have said 21. I seem to remember. But anyway, so he says he uses a little duct tape for muffling. The muffling is built into the drums, is totally useless and should be dismantled completely. So he didn't like Tama's. Remember those old... there were a couple different versions of their internal tone controls. The older ones had a thing where you could adjust it, and another thing that was plastic that you could gauge it on and gauge it off. I think he might be talking about those. All right. And then he says he tries some gloves in those days called drum gloves by Rug Caddy. He said they're pretty neat, but he didn't really like them that much because they fell apart pretty fast. Then he says there's certain delays he has and stuff. Oh, and here's Jeff Seitz. Jeff Seitz, wonderful guy who's been Stewart Copeland's drum tech for the past, I think, 40 years, right? I got a chance to talk to Jeff Seitz on the phone a couple times because I found his number in the mid-aughts, when the police rebanned, so maybe 01 or 02. Super nice guy. He went to Juilliard. He's a skilled musician drummer. He's a great drummer. Anyway, so Jeff Seitz on Stewart's equipment. This is October 1982 Modern Drummer. So some of us might have seen this in the 82. I remember the 82 Modern Drummer. In fact, that's the picture in that Modern Drummer where Copeland's sitting back and you can see Zildjian on the two splash cymbals. Okay, here's the author, or the interviewer, RF. Is that Robin, somebody? Why did Stewart's drums sound so good at the Forum? The LA Forum, I suppose. Seitz says, Stewart tunes his drums completely different than rock drummers of the past. And this is kind of long, but he says, he's going to say, because this is going to go on. Okay, would you detail Stewart's setup for me? Okay, they're all Tama. The Imperial Star Tama, which is a thicker drum with 9-ply shells as opposed to 6. They actually take the beating better. Now, real fast, there was a period